Welcome to the third and final part of the training course. In this video, we will be describing some important aspects of decision making for projects, including what typically goes wrong on projects and some ways of overcoming this to improve the likelihood of good outcomes. We will start by describing what a project is. A project is defined in the Project Management Book of Knowledge as a temporary endeavour undertaken to create a unique product, service or result. In this definition, temporary is explained as meaning that it has a start and an end and is not ongoing repetitive work. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a project as an individual or collaborative enterprise that is carefully planned to achieve a particular aim. These definitions apply to a wide variety of things. They can be commercial projects like building an oil rig or designing a new software package, or they can be personal projects like building an extension on your house or organising a party. The decision-gated framework is used to progress a project through its various phases. Typically, there are 5 phases and each phase is separated by a decision gate. Work is carried out during each phase and then a decision is made on whether or not to continue into the next phase. Note that this is not an alternative to the method presented in the previous training video. Rather, the 6 dimensions of a good decision should be used at each decision gate. There are 4 options at each decision gate. The first is to go ahead and proceed to the next phase. The second option is to put it on hold, i.e. this is something that looks promising, but the time isn't quite right now, so put it on hold and wait to see when the conditions are right to proceed. The third is to recycle back into the phase and carry out further work before coming back to the decision. The fourth option is to stop the project completely and abandon it. One of the reasons for the decision-gated framework is to stop projects early on if they are not going to add value. This framework allows you to assess at the end of each phase whether you should be continuing or not. The first phase of the decision-gated framework is the appraise phase. In this, you're gathering information about the opportunity to determine whether this is an opportunity worth pursuing further. In the select phase, it is important that you have a broad range of alternatives and select the best one. This is a critical phase and a key decision for ensuring that the project's outcome delivers what you want. There are 2 decisions at the end of this phase. First is the decision on which is the best alternative. Then there is the usual decision at each decision gate of whether you want to proceed, hold, recycle or stop. It may be that it is not worth proceeding with the project, even with the best alternative. In the define phase, you are fleshing out the information you have about the selected alternative, so that you are clear on what you will be committed to if you decide to go ahead. In the execute phase, you are implementing what was agreed at the end of the define phase, and then, when it is complete, you move into operation. Although the decision-gated framework is mainly applied to commercial projects, it can also be used for personal projects. As an example, we're going to apply it to the project of finding a partner and getting married. In the appraise phase, gathering and assessing information might mean talking to friends and then deciding whether you want to give up the single life and settle down with a partner. In the next phase, assessing a wide range of alternatives means playing the field and then, when the time is right, deciding whether you might have found the one for you. In the define phase, determining what you'll be committing to means taking some time to test whether you're well suited. If you think that you are, you may want to confirm the relationship by proposing. The execute phase is about preparing for the wedding, agreeing a date, finding a venue, organising caterers, inviting guests, arranging florists, etc. All being well, that leads to the marriage vows and, hopefully, a full and happy life afterwards. If not, there is always the option to go into recycle and start over again. There are two problems which commonly beset projects and which compound each other. The planning fallacy describes plans and forecasts which are best case scenarios or unrealistically close to those. Unfortunately, examples of this are only too common. For instance, construction of the Sydney Opera House was started in 1959 with a scheduled completion date of 1963. It was finally completed 10 years late in 1973. The optimism of planners and decision makers is one cause for the planning fallacy. However, sometimes unrealistic plans are driven by the desire to get a plan approved. A schedule-driven project is one where meeting target dates is the primary objective. Unfortunately, the desire to pass through decision gates at the scheduled time means that decisions may be based on incomplete and inaccurate information and without a real understanding of the associated risks and uncertainties. For the decision at the end of the select phase, this can lead to the wrong option being selected and a significant loss of value for the project. And changes are frequently required if the project has moved into the execute phase with an incomplete level of definition, resulting in costly and time-consuming rework. The combination of the planning fallacy and a project being schedule-driven is particularly damaging, usually resulting in high cost overruns, long delays, and a poor quality outcome in terms of the project not fully achieving what it set out to. Fortunately, there are ways of mitigating this by taking the outside view and front-end loading. We'll describe these in the next slides. Taking the outside view means using the data from similar cases to obtain a comparative forecast and predict likely project outcomes. This is also known as reference class forecasting. It involves using databases containing information on plans and outcomes for hundreds of projects of a similar type. These provide information on likely overruns of cost and time and on underperformance of projects. These databases are available. For instance, Independent Project Analysis has databases for a range of industries, including oil and gas, chemicals, mining, pharmaceuticals, food processing, and power. Taking the outside view is important for forecasting the likely cost, duration, and performance of projects. The first three phases of the decision-gated framework are known as the front-end loading phases. They are mainly about information gathering and obtaining a better definition of the project before deciding whether to commit to it. For these phases, front-end loading means that you have sufficient project definition to enable a well-informed decision to be made at the end of each phase. Putting this another way, front-end loading does not occur until you're ready to make a good decision, i.e., you have achieved good for each of the 6 dimensions of a good decision as described in the previous training video. However, for front-end loading, there is a particular emphasis on the 4th dimension, i.e., ensuring that you have all the necessary information before making a decision. So, to illustrate the concept, you should not start designing the foundations for a house until you know how big it's going to be, what its size and shape is, how many floors it has. You should not start designing the walls until you know where the doors and windows are going to go. These are fundamental aspects of front-end loading. You should not move into the next phase of the project until you've completed the current one to a level of definition which is sufficient to make an informed decision. It does not mean that you need to know every detail so that there are no uncertainties, but rather the level of uncertainty is appropriate for what is required for that particular decision. Research has shown that front-end loading is a significant driver of project success. Projects with good front-end loading cost less, take less time to execute, and perform better. The pre-mortem is a tool that can be used as a final check prior to committing important decisions. In contrast to a post-mortem, which is carried out after the event to find out why things went wrong, a pre-mortem occurs during a project to prevent the project going wrong or to minimize the consequences if it does go wrong. Research has found that if you imagine that an event has already occurred, it increases your ability to correctly identify reasons for future outcomes by 30%. This concept was used to create the pre-mortem, which provides a safe environment for project team members to identify weaknesses that could result in project failure. Otherwise, when a team comes to a decision, and particularly when the leader has a strong involvement in it, doubts about the plan are gradually, even subconsciously, suppressed. This contributes to overconfidence in the team as only support for the decision is expressed. The pre-mortem takes place after an important decision has been made, but before it has been formally committed. Key members of the project team are gathered together. The leader says that it is very important that we identify any potential weaknesses of the proposed decision before committing to it, so that we can assess whether the risks are acceptable or whether any changes or corrective actions are required. The leader starts the exercise by informing everyone that it's now a time in the future when the project has been implemented as per the decision and the outcome is a spectacular disaster. During the next few minutes, everyone works independently and writes down all the potential reasons they can think of for the failure, especially things that would not normally be mentioned for fear of being impolitic. The leader then asks each team member to read one reason from their list. Everyone states a different reason until they're all recorded. After the session, these are reviewed, looking for ways to strengthen the planned way forward. The dimensions of a good decision, explained in the second training video, could be used as prompts to help find reasons for failure. For example, did it go wrong because of incomplete or inaccurate information? Did we look at sufficient alternatives? Has sound reasoning been used when selecting the preferred alternative? In summary, the planning fallacy and projects being schedule driven are two reasons why projects have frequently failed to live up to expectations. To increase the probability of a good project outcome, it is important to set realistic targets based on taking the outside view and to complete front-end loading. Projects with good front-end loading tend to cost less, take less time to execute, and perform better. In addition, consider carrying out a pre-mortem as a final check before committing to a decision.